Hey everyone, welcome back. So today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Shopify's Q3 2024 performance, and we've got their press release and financial statements right here with us.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, should be fun.
Looking forward to it.
Now we're not just gonna, like skim the surface here.
Yeah.
We're gonna really try to figure out what these numbers actually mean
Yeah.
for Shopify's future, and maybe even get a glimpse of where e-commerce is headed as a whole.
Sounds good.
Okay, so first off, Shopify's president, Harley Finkelstein,
Right.
called Q3 outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't mince words there.
He didn't.
So when you look at these reports, what makes you say, like, wow, this quarter is really something special?
I think it's the consistency of their growth that's really remarkable. You know, that 26% year-over-year revenue increase?
Yeah.
That's not a fluke. They've actually exceeded 25% growth for 6 quarters straight.
Wow.
If you exclude their logistics business. So in the unpredictable world of e-commerce, that kind of steady climb is really impressive. They're not just riding the wave, they're building something sustainable.
Right.
It makes you wonder what they're doing that others aren't.
Okay, so let's talk about one number. That might make some eyes glaze over a little bit.
Oh.
19% free cash flow margin. Break it down for us. What does that actually mean, and why should we care?
So think of free cash flow as the money a company has left over after they pay all the bills and invest in its growth.
Okay.
So a 19% margin like Shopify's means they're generating a healthy pile of cash. And that gives them the flexibility to do all sorts of things. You know, invest in new ideas, maybe even acquire other companies, or just build a safety net for tougher times. It's a big green flag for financial health.
So it's like they're not just winning the race.
Yeah.
They're building a bigger and faster car as they go.
I like that analogy.
And remember that quote from Shopify's CFO Jeff Hoffmeister? He talked about durability, growth avenues, and discipline.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're really living those values, not just talking about them. Absolutely. And that consistent free cash flow margin growth is a clear sign of that. They're not chasing quick wins. They're building a business that's built to last. And that's crucial in an industry as dynamic as e-commerce, where the only constant is change.
Right. Okay, so we've got this big picture of impressive growth and financial stability, but I always find it more interesting to kind of like zoom in on the details.
Yeah, me too.
So, for example, their financial statement shows this massive jump in merchant solutions revenue.
Okay.
It went from $1,228 million to $1,552 million
Wow.
in just one quarter.
That's huge.
And then loans and merchant cash advances also saw a significant increase. So what's going on there? Is this about Shopify becoming more than just a platform for building an online store?
It's definitely a sign that they're evolving. That surge in merchant solutions revenue tells us that they're successfully expanding beyond just the basics. They're offering more and more tools and services that help merchants manage every single aspect of their business. Think payments, shipping, marketing, even analytics. It's a smart move because it lets them capture a bigger slice of their merchant spending, and it creates a stickier ecosystem. Merchants are less likely to leave if Shopify is handling so much for them.
It's like they're becoming the one-stop shop for everything an online business needs.
Right.
And the rise in loans and merchant cash advances, what's the strategy there? Are they just being like a friendly bank?
There's always a strategy. By offering these financing options, Shopify is making it easier for merchants to grow their businesses.
Okay.
And guess what? That ultimately leads to more revenue for Shopify itself. Plus, it gives them valuable insights into their merchants' financial health, which they can use to refine their offerings and assess risk. It's a win-win, at least on paper.
Okay, so things are looking pretty rosy in Q3. But everyone wants to know, what about the future? What does Shopify's crystal ball say about the rest of 2024?
Well, they're projecting continued strong performance. But let's dig into the specifics and see if their optimism is justified. What really jumped out at you from their projections?
Well, right off the bat, they expect revenue to keep growing at a mid-to-high-20s percentage rate year over year.
Okay.
Basically more of the same impressive growth we've been seeing. They're not pumping the brakes at all.
Which, considering their track record, might not be unrealistic. But it is worth remembering that maintaining such high growth rates gets harder. As a company grows larger, there's just more competition and often less room to expand.
Right, so it's like trying to maintain that sprinter speed when you're turning into a marathon runner.
Good analogy.
What else are they expecting?
They also anticipate that gross profit dollar growth will be similar to what we saw in Q3 2024. Essentially, they're saying their profitability will stay strong. which is good news.
Good.
And they've given some specific expectations for their GAAP operating expenses as a percentage of revenue.
Okay, now I know GAAP operating expenses sounds like something straight out of an accounting textbook.
Yeah.
So break that down for us. What are they actually talking about, and why should we care?
It's simpler than it sounds. They're basically projecting how much they'll spend on running the business day to day. Think salaries, marketing, keeping the lights on, that kind of thing.
Got it.
They're projecting that to be somewhere between 32 to 33% of their revenue.
Okay.
This tells us that they're aiming for a balance between investing in growth and keeping things efficient. It'll be interesting to see how they manage those expenses, especially given the economic uncertainty we've been seeing globally.
So it's a tightrope walk. Invest enough to grow, but don't overspend and risk instability.
Right.
Tricky. They're also saying that their free cash flow margin in Q4 should be similar to Q4 2023, so that steady cash generation continues, which fits with their whole durability theme.
Yes, but this projection also raises an interesting question. Are they being overly ambitious or playing it safe? Given their Q3 performance and the overall economic climate, it's hard to say for sure. Some might see this as cautious, while others might see it as a sign of confidence in their ability to handle whatever comes their way.
It's like they're saying we're good, but we're also going to be smart about it.
Right. Now, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
That section in their press release titled Forward-Looking Statements, that's where companies often hide the really important stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes the stuff that keeps them up at night. So what kind of risks are they highlighting?
Well, they're acknowledging a few key challenges.
Okay.
One of them is the age-old struggle of keeping that growth going while keeping expenses under control. It's a balancing act that gets trickier as they expand into new markets and product lines.
Right.
They also point to the potential impact of economic shifts and changes in how people spend their money, which are obviously things they can't control.
So that's got to be a little bit nerve-wracking.
It is.
I mean, no one has a crystal ball.
Yeah.
And the economy has been so unpredictable lately.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder how much is within Shopify's control and how much is just riding the wave of larger economic trends.
Right. And then there's their reliance on third-party cloud providers. That's a big one in today's world.
Any disruption or security breach at one of those providers could have major consequences for Shopify and their merchants. And of course, there's always the risk of cyber attacks, which are becoming more sophisticated all the time.
All the time, yeah.
Plus, let's not forget the possibility of good old-fashioned software or hardware errors,
Right.
which can be costly to fix and damage their reputation.
So it's not all sunshine and roses. There are some real storm clouds on the horizon.
Sure.
But before we dive into what all of this means for the listener, let's take a quick break.
Sounds good.
When we come back, we'll unpack those risks, look at the competitive landscape, and explore some broader trends shaping the future of e-commerce. Stay tuned. Okay, so we're back. And ready to kind of dive even deeper into the world of Shopify. We've talked about their impressive performance and those, kind of looming risks, but let's not forget, they're not playing this game alone.
No, they're not.
So it's a competitive landscape out there. So who are the big players that Shopify is up against?
Well, you can't talk about e-commerce without mentioning Amazon. They're the 800-pound gorilla in the room, the giant that everyone's trying to measure up to. Right. Then you've got veterans like eBay, still holding their own after all these years, and Walmart, who's been making a serious push into the online space. So it's a mix of established titans and scrappy upstarts, all vying for a piece of the pie.
So it's a jungle out there.
It is.
So what makes Shopify stand out in this crowd? What are their superpowers that let them compete with these giants?
I think one of their biggest strengths is their laser focus on those small and medium-sized businesses.
Okay.
They've built a platform that's refreshingly easy to use, even for people who aren't tech wizards.
Right.
And they offer a range of pricing plans that won't break the bank, making it accessible to businesses at all stages of growth. It's a different approach than, say, Amazon, which can be overwhelming for smaller sellers. And sometimes it feels like you're competing with Amazon itself.
So they're like the David to Amazon's Goliath.
I like that.
I like that too. But David needed a good slingshot.
He did.
So what about Shopify's technology? Is that what gives them an edge?
Absolutely. They've poured resources into building a platform that's both robust and scalable, so it can handle those massive spikes in traffic and transactions.
Yeah.
Without breaking a sweat.
Okay.
And they're constantly innovating, adding new features. To stay ahead of the curve, remember when we talked about that surge in merchant solutions revenue? That's them branching out, going beyond just website building and offering those extra tools that businesses really need.
So they're user-friendly, they're affordable, and they've got the tech chops to back it up.
They do.
It sounds like a winning formula. But even superheroes have weaknesses.
Right.
So what are some of the things that could trip Shopify up in this competitive arena?
Well, one challenge is the rise of these specialized e-commerce platforms. They cater to very specific niches.
Okay.
So there are platforms for handmade goods, for digital products, for subscription boxes, you name it. These niche platforms can sometimes offer features and support that are perfectly tailored to those specific types of businesses.
So they might lose some customers who are looking for a more bespoke solution.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. What other potential vulnerabilities should we be aware of?
Well, remember those risks they outline in their forward-looking statements?
Yeah.
Maintaining that breakneck growth while managing expenses, that's going to be a tightrope walk, especially as they branch out into new areas.
All right.
And as they expand globally, they'll need to stay agile,
Mhm.
adapting to different customer needs and regulations in each market.
It's like they're juggling while riding a unicycle on a tightrope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the elephant in the room,
Oh boy.
the global economic climate. A slowdown in consumer spending could hit their merchant sales, which would ultimately affect Shopify's bottom line. They're not immune to those larger economic forces.
No one is. Okay, so plenty of opportunities,
Yeah.
but plenty of potential pitfalls too.
Right.
So if we take a step back and look at the bigger picture, what are some of the trends shaping the future of e-commerce? What does Shopify need to keep an eye on?
One trend that's impossible to ignore is the unstoppable rise of mobile commerce. More and more people are shopping on their smartphones and tablets,
Yeah.
and that's only going to increase. Shopify has done a good job of making their platform mobile-friendly, but they need to constantly fine-tune that mobile shopping experience to stay ahead of the game.
Makes sense. What else is on your e-commerce trend watch list?
Another big one is the growing power of social commerce. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest are becoming major shopping destinations. People are discovering and buying products without ever leaving those apps.
Wow.
So Shopify needs to figure out how to seamlessly integrate with these social platforms and help their merchants capitalize on this trend.
So it's not enough to just have a website anymore. You need to be where the customers are, and increasingly that's on social media.
Right.
Anything else we should be paying attention to?
Definitely, the demand for personalized shopping experiences is exploding. Customers want tailored recommendations, content that feels relevant to them, and communication that feels personal. So Shopify needs to leverage data and AI to help their merchants deliver that personalization at scale.
Okay.
It's a tall order, but it's becoming the expectation.
It's like those personalized recommendations that you get on like streaming services, but for everything you buy online.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about making the shopping experience feel less like a transaction and more like a conversation.
Okay.
So Shopify needs to be agile, to adapt to these trends and to stay one step ahead.
Well, they haven't exactly been sitting still.
No, they haven't.
So have they taken any concrete steps to tackle these challenges and seize these opportunities?
They've actually made some savvy moves.
Okay.
For example, they acquired a company called Deliver to boost their fulfillment capabilities. It's all about helping their merchants compete with Amazon's massive logistics network. It's a way to level the playing field a bit. And they've also been investing in augmented reality and virtual reality technologies,
Oh, wow.
which is allowing merchants to create more immersive and engaging shopping experiences.
So it sounds like they're not just reacting to trends, they're trying to anticipate what's next.
I think so.
That's encouraging.
It definitely shows they're thinking long term. They understand that the e-commerce landscape is a constantly shifting terrain,
Yeah.
and they're taking steps to make sure they don't get left behind.
Okay, so we've explored the battlefield, we've scoped out those looming trends. So before we move on to our final analysis, let's quickly recap what we've learned.
To sum it up, Shopify is in a strong position to compete in this ever-evolving world of e-commerce. Their commitment to small and medium businesses, their robust technology, and their constant innovation give them a real edge. But they can't get complacent. They've got to stay sharp aware of the competition from niche platforms and ready to ride the waves of those emerging trends like mobile commerce, social commerce, and personalized shopping. Those moves they've made acquiring Deliver, investing in AR/VR show that they're serious about staying ahead of the curve.
Okay, so buckle up. In the final part of our deep dive, we'll analyze what all of this means for Shopify's future and the future of e-commerce as a whole. We'll talk about what this means for investors and leave you with some food for thought. Stay with us.
Welcome back for our final analysis of Shopify. We've crunched the numbers,
Right.
sized up the competition, and explored the trends shaping e-commerce.
It's been a journey. It has been a journey. So now it's time to put it all together
Right.
and gaze into that crystal ball. What does the future hold for Shopify? And what might their trajectory tell us about the future of online business as a whole?
It's the big question, isn't it?
It really is. And trying to predict the future is always a gamble,
Always.
especially in such a fast-moving industry like e-commerce.
Right.
But based on everything we've seen,
I know.
Shopify seems to be in a pretty enviable position.
I'd agree with that.
They've got that growth momentum, they're generating cash, and they're not afraid to innovate.
They're not.
But as we've discussed, there are always those what-ifs
Oh, yeah.
that could kind of throw a wrench in the works.
Definitely.
So are we talking about a meteoric rise or a potential crash and burn? Will Shopify become the undisputed king of e-commerce? Or will they fade into obscurity?
I doubt it'll be that dramatic. The e-commerce landscape is too dynamic, too complex for any single company to really rule it all. What's more likely is that we'll see this ongoing evolution, this dance between different players who each cater to different segments and niches.
So more of a collaborative ecosystem
Right.
than a winner-take-all battle.
Exactly. Shopify might not become like the everything store that Amazon is, but they could really solidify their position as the ultimate platform. For independent businesses and those entrepreneurial spirits, that focus on empowering the little guy could be their key to long-term success.
It's almost like they're building a movement, not just a company.
Right.
Now let's talk about the topic that's probably on a lot of minds,
Yeah.
investments. Given everything we've discussed, is Shopify stock a smart bet? Should people be rushing to buy?
I wouldn't call it a no-brainer.
Okay.
Their performance and growth potential are definitely enticing, but investors need to weigh those against the risks we've talked about.
Yeah.
Things like competition, the unpredictable economy,
Yeah.
and that constant need to adapt.
So not a slam dunk, but definitely worth considering for those who understand the game and aren't afraid of a little risk.
Exactly. It all comes down to doing your homework, researching the company thoroughly, and understanding both the potential rewards and the potential downsides before making any decisions.
Now, before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. We've spent a lot of time talking about Shopify's impact on businesses, but what about their impact on us as consumers? How might their success and the growth of e-commerce in general change the way we shop, the way we discover new products, the way we interact with brands?
It's a fascinating question, and it's clear that e-commerce has already transformed the retail landscape. It's given us more choices, more convenience, and more control over our shopping experience.
Yeah, for sure.
So as platforms like Shopify continue to empower businesses and break down those barriers to selling online, we might see this even greater blurring of the lines between online and offline shopping.
Imagine a world where every business, no matter how small, has a global reach, and every consumer has access to practically unlimited choices.
It's not as far-fetched as it might sound. And as technology continues to evolve, we can expect even more innovation and disruption in the e-commerce space. Who knows what the future holds? But one thing is certain, it's going to be an interesting ride.
Well said, and on that note, we've reached the end of our Shopify deep dive. I hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have.
It's been a pleasure.
It has.
Excellent.
Remember, the world of e-commerce never stands still. So stay curious, stay informed, keep exploring. Until next time.